black spots.
For this project, we'll need a small Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver. Before we begin, always remove the battery and AC adapter. Remove the single retaining screw underneath the battery, holding down the media control cover to the base assembly. Unscrew the 3 retaining screws on the access door. Lift the door away from the laptop base. Remove the 4 screws holding down the hard drive to the base assembly. Carefully slide the hard drive to the right and carefully lift it out of the laptop. With your fingers, separate the clips on each side of the memory stick until the memory lifts up. Gently pull the memory stick away from the memory slot. Unplug the antenna cables from the PCI wireless cards. Loosen them from their routing channels. Unscrew the single wireless card retaining screw. Slide the wireless card out of the slot. Remove the 8 screws holding down the touchpad palm rest to the base assembly. Flip the laptop over, open the display assembly and flattening out as much as possible. Unsnap the media control cover from the palm rest starting at the back near the screen. Remove the 2 screws holding down the keyboard. Slowly lift the keyboard away from the base and turn it over. If you pull too hard, you risk breaking the keyboard cable connector on the motherboard. Pivot the keyboard cable latch and the backlight cable latch up and unplug the cables. Disconnect the power button cable. Pull the antenna cables through the base and loosen all the cables from the routing channels. Disconnect the display cable. Remove the 10 screws holding down the touchpad palm rest to the bottom base assembly. Unplug the speaker cable. Unplug the touchpad cable. Carefully unsnap the palm rest away from the base assembly. Remove the single retaining screw holding the optical drive to the base assembly. Remove the optical drive from the motherboard. Disconnect the USB port cable and the DC jack cable from the motherboard. Unscrew the 4 screws holding down the express card slot media card reader I/O circuit board to the base assembly. Unplug and remove the express card slot, media card reader I/O circuit board cables. Unplug the cooling fan from the motherboard. Unplug the subwoofer from the motherboard. Remove the 6 screws holding the motherboard to the base assembly. Lift and remove the motherboard from the base assembly. Seat the motherboard into the base assembly. Secure the motherboard to the base assembly with the 6 screws. Plug in the cooling fan. Plug in the subwoofer. Plug the DC jack cable into the motherboard. Plug the USB slot cable to the motherboard. Plug in the express card slot, media card reader I/O circuit board cables. Place the circuit board into the base assembly. Secure it with the 4 screws. Set the optical drive into the base assembly. Press the connection onto the motherboard. Replace the single retaining screw. Place the touchpad palm rest onto the base assembly while snapping the edges down. Replace the 10 screws holding down the touchpad palm rest to the base assembly. Plug the touchpad cable in. Plug the speaker cable in. Reroute the antenna cables. Reroute the LCD display cable and plug it into the motherboard. Reroute the power button cable and plug it into the motherboard. Pass the antenna wires through the motherboard. Plug the keyboard cable and backlight cable into the motherboard. Place the keyboard into the base, secure it with the 2 screws. Replace the media control cover and snap it down on the palm rest. Close and flip the laptop over. Seat the wireless card into the slot and screw down the single retaining screw. Reroute the antenna cables and plug them into the wireless PCI cards. Place the memory stick into the memory slot so that the cutout matches. Do this at a 45-degree angle and push down firmly until you hear a click. Screw in the retaining screw underneath the battery. Replace the 8 screws holding down the touchpad palm rest to the base assembly. Place the hard drive into the laptop, slide it to the left into the connector. Secure it with the 4 screws. Place the access door onto the laptop base. Screw down the 3 screws. Replace the battery.
We hope you found this tutorial useful. All parts discussed in this tutorial can be found at partspeople.com.